I don't appreciate being asked, what do you think? I'm not here to think. I'm here for you to tell me stuff. Are you hearing yourself right now? So yeah, unfortunately, there is not really an expectation from everybody coming into the boot camp that they are going to be challenged intellectually and need to think critically in order to solve problems.
So, Megan, hello. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you being here.
I'm so glad to be here and chat with you. Seriously, BlatzChatz, are you kidding?
So, Megan, I like to start off with a broad question. And hey, what's on your mind these days?
What is on my mind these days has honestly been something that's in the collective consciousness. Are these boot camp scams, or are they legitimately helping people get jobs, skill up, and become these valued members of our technological society? Or are they just selling the American dream as a potential, maybe you could have this, and just taking people's money? That's been on my mind a lot lately.
Yeah, let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah. So something that I saw recently, and I actually posted it to my LinkedIn, it was a Reddit post by a design director. So they didn't really identify who they are and what industry they're in, just that they are a UX manager and they were looking to hire a junior designer so that they could help them skill up and come along. And they opened up a job on LinkedIn and got over 500 applicants in less than a week. And they were thinking, cool, I have so many options with all of these early career designers. I'm going to crack knuckles. I'm going to get in there and be really excited about separating the wheat from the chaff, if you will. And it turns out there's unfortunately a lot of chaff. And as a former boot camp instructor, that's normal. There are a lot of folks who take the idea and don't necessarily put in the time and effort to actually bring it to real fruition. I always say that in my classes, if I had an average of 30 students, somewhere between 1 and 3 would be stellar. Not only do you get it when I share A and B, but you take C and D, and then you ask questions that lead you down the road to E and F, like really go-getter, maybe have a little bit of context from previous experiences, maybe don't have, a design degree or anything like that, but they get it, they clip in. And then there's a lot of folks who are on the bell curve. They've got some experience, or they've at least got some aptitude towards things, and they're willing to do the work. And that's probably another 70%. So if that top percent is 5, then we've got some 75, and then we've got the bottom of the barrel. And this is really consistent across different cohorts. I've talked to people at multiple boot camps. I've talked to people who teach through the 2U, which is now edX. They're partnered with a ton of colleges and universities across the US and Canada. And yeah, there's just some people who show up thinking, they told me that I could do this, get a certificate, and get $100,000 a year job. And that's what I'm going to do. And they just refuse to do anything more than the bare minimum effort. And they don't participate in group projects. They're not communicative. I had one person who was combative to say, I just don't understand the point of this design research. And my poor face is like, I'm sorry, what? I maybe misunderstood you, because there's no way you just looked in my face on a one-on-one video call and said, you don't see the point of the boot camp you just paid $15,000 to be a part of. So your mileage may vary, but I think there's a lot of people who came in very well-intentioned and hoped to do the work and really hoped to change their lives. These people are looking for family sustaining wages, not I work a day job for 8 hours and then I do gig work on the side in order to just barely make the minimum of what I need to accomplish to feed my kids and cover my bills. I'm finding there's a lot of examples of where maybe there's some unethical, maybe not illegal, but definitely immoral and unethical in my book, for how you've gotten people roped in and then just don't give them their money back. What I'm hoping I don't find, but I'm interested to know, and this is why it's been on my mind and I've been digging into it so much, is I'm wondering if there are financial crimes involved, perhaps with aligning with or funneling people towards credit, scholarships, some sort, not scholarships, what am I thinking of? Loans to take on this new challenge of upskilling and career changing. And maybe they might be making money from sending those students that direction? And if so, I would be very interested in finding out if we've got some things going on that are not on the up and up. So no accusations, no expectations, but it sure does seem that there's a lot of people who are not getting what they paid for, or at least are not perceiving that they're getting what they paid for.
Yeah, and that's just one aspect, Megan, the financial side of things, right?
Yeah.
What about the lack of delivery on a promise? Not just a promise to get a job
Yeah.
is a
But
promise.
through education.
Right, but the promise that you're going to know what you need to know after this boot camp.
I do feel bad for people who take that particular statement at face value, because really and truly, it does take in UX, it takes a lot of curiosity and willingness to go beyond. Here's the amount of information I was given. So I'm thinking of a paragraph or a sheet of information, and then kind of thinking outside of the box. What are the additional questions that I have that has not been provided to me in this? And this is very interesting because it kind of does tie into an old, couple of years old article by Debbie Levitt about, are you a type A designer or a type B designer? And a type A, I might get these transposed, but one of them is a production designer. I'm an order taker. I do the tasks, I deliver my work, and I don't really have questions. I don't really challenge who's answering or giving me these tasks to do, and I don't really use any critical thinking as part of my design process. And then there's the other hand, which is I am the critical thinker. I am considering the whole customer experience from when they are first introduced to the brand to when they close their account and everything in between and what all ties together. And that is so far beyond what is possible to be taught in a 6 year or 6 month boot camp that it's almost laughable for someone to be, yeah, this is absolutely everything I need.
Right.
Especially as I wrote a curriculum for 2U. So I was a instructor, and I was the hand raiser quite a few times to say, hey, this is outdated, or hey, there's a better way we can do this, or maybe there's a different technology we can use, because Envision is very difficult. And not to beat a dead horse literally, but yeah, Envision didn't do themselves any favors in that sense. But I wrote curriculum that had to be edited and re-edited because I am a very wordy person. I want to give as much information as possible, and it's limited. What we got pushback from with the editors and the learning designers was they're not going to read this much text. They're not that interested in learning the details. Oh, okay. That's got to recalibrate my brain with that association. So there was a ton of information I would have loved to have taught, but there's just no way it could have been crammed into a 6 month experience. And there's what will the market bear in terms of a product? And apparently a 9 or 12 month boot camp was just never going to sell.
Right, because you wanted to include all that additional
Oh, yeah.
context.
Yeah. And this is why one of the main reasons that I ended up deciding I'm going to build an apprenticeship agency, because I see that there are thousands of students out here now who have either completed a boot camp or in the process of completing a boot camp, and they're just not prepared to be hired. It's not that they're not worth being hired. It's that they cannot perform in a way that hiring managers really need people to do, especially when we have industries that move so quickly. We are currently dealing with generative AI products in literally every technical product I can think of, and many that don't need an AI feature. These students coming out of boot camp, they've never handed off work to an actual developer. They've simulated it, but they've never done it. They've never worked with an actual product manager, project manager, product owner. They don't really know the difference between those roles. They don't truly understand how to do research. They know how to follow some instructions, but if you handed them a new project and said, Greenfield, what do you want to research? They'd revert back to whatever it is that they came up with for their first project, because they've never experienced being able to truly flex that muscle.
Sure. Do you find that these boot camps are, shall I say, catering toward that order taker? They're telling them what to do rather than having the students exercise that critical thinking and decide, hey, I need to do research in this way for this thing? Or are they rather saying, you need to do this, check this box as far as the research goes?
I'm going to nod my head so hard for the yes, it's an order taker, especially, and I hate saying this, but especially around UX research. And I'm sure you see so much of this. People who I am assuming reach out to you all the time for help to say, hi, I wanted to do this research. And you're like, this is the same question I saw the last 3 people who asked me this question asked on their interview questions. And that's not meaningful. So, what I think is required is for them to learn how to think more critically and have their ideas and their questions challenged. And that is, again, not typically found in a boot camp scenario. One of my friends, Ryan Davidson, he's in the gaming industry. He's not a UX designer, he's a product manager or product owner. And he had students in the UX UI bootcamp at UC Davis that would actually challenge him or get angry. They would leave snarky feedback to say, I don't appreciate being asked, what do you think? I'm not here to think. I'm here for you to tell me stuff. Are you hearing yourself right now? So, yeah, unfortunately, there is not really an expectation from everybody coming into the boot camp that they are going to be challenged intellectually and need to think critically in order to solve problems. So, what I do know based on what I've seen for those boot camps that I taught for and that I wrote for is that the application process and the assessment, the skills assessment is not, in fact, an application process. It's a sales process. And not to totally crap on boot camps, but like higher education does this too. Stanford, their freshman class is some insane number of people. Does that same number of people reach the senior class? No, and not everybody is dropping out to found their own business, their own startup. They are in fact just not escalating through the process the way it is intended, or they're not enjoying it, but they are being challenged in order to reach that higher level of education. And we don't have those kind of guardrails on boot camps. I say we, but I don't teach for boot camps anymore. I do not see those types of guardrails to ensure that there is actually going to be a successful outcome at the end of committing 5 to 10 to $15,000 and 6 months of your time.
Sure, that makes sense. So, one more question about boot camps, Megan. Do you feel like they've changed from 5, 10 years ago to now to meet the changing demands?
I think some of them have evolved, yes. I am not certain. Okay, let me also choose my words carefully here because I don't want to make people feel like this is not a viable career option. I need you to know that I went to a boot camp 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago. I went to a coding boot camp. We learned full stack development, and I immediately went out and got a job as a front end developer and became a UX designer through on the job training I just was in a really great startup and had the opportunity to learn and someone who cared enough to help me learn. And I wouldn't say that their curriculum has stayed the same. In fact, I know that they evolved that curriculum. That was Epicodus here in Portland, and they have actually recently closed. And as much as I'm sad to see them go, I think they also recognize we are not trying to take money from people who are not going to find a successful outcome. We have helped as many people as possible, but there's a cost balance of whether or not it's viable to have that boot camp open. So some of them have in fact evolved. And then some of them have really stagnated. A lot of the complaints that I've heard coming out of the 2U boot camps is that the curriculum is not updated frequently enough. And I think the biggest problem they have is that they have so many universities and so many instructors teaching from the same content that like updating it's an overhaul. We spent a year and a half rewriting an entirely new curriculum for an asynchronous format. And I don't actually really know where that went. That was right before edX and 2U merged, and I saw the writing on the wall. Ooh, this sounds like a terrible game. I'm going to run away now. But and went back to doing UX as my day job. There are other boot camps who don't appear to be using high quality materials to start with. So their evolution is never going to actually show any true value because they weren't bringing value to start with. Not going to name any names, but I'm starting to make a list.
That's fair. I hear what you're saying.
And
So
at the same time, I think I make a list, but at the same time, I think that there are people who are going to succeed regardless of the program that they go through. And I think that there is a lot to be said for the tenacity, the ability to go through it, but also seek out any other assistance and help. And a lot of those folks who do are the ones who seek external mentorship, not just what's offered by the boot camp, but other people. I know so many seniors and manager levels who are getting people just hitting them up out of the blue. And hopefully you find and connect with someone and that they can help your career grow. But I also know that there's more mentees than there are mentors available, and not every mentor is created the same.
Sure. And it makes sense. you should be gathering information from multiple sources,
Oh,
right?
yes. Yes.
Yeah,
I mean, as a researcher, I'm sure you're like, well, I don't just take what one website says or what one user says is their experience. I need to gather contextual details. It's all about gathering information.
exactly. For sure.
Check out all my interviews with industry leaders on BlatzChatz.